better best. Never let it rest until the good becomes better and the better becomes best.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm your host, Craig Steger. I have Jonah with me today. And the topic of today's episode is something that happened during the bombing of Hiroshima back in World War II. And Jonah saw this article. He sent it to me, and we've talked about it a little bit. And he wanted to talk about that. And then I'm going to do my little devil's advocate questions to rattle his faith. So with that in mind, Jonah, why don't you go ahead and introduce us to the article?
So it's an article in the National Catholic Register. It was entitled "The Jesuit Priests Who Survived Hiroshima." So basically it's about how there were 8 Jesuit missionaries who were in their rectory directly below the bomb blast. They say it was in the hypocenter of the attack. So I had to look it up. But the hypocenter is the region right below where they detonated the bomb. So the force of the bomb came down on them. And so there are 8 guys there. And
Jesuit priests, 8 priests, right?
Jesuit priests. Yep, the Jesuits, those liberal Jesuits. But they not only survived, but the church was untouched basically by the attack. There were some shattered windows, but the building stayed solid. In the photo, they show just the devastation around the church. There was nothing standing outside of the church for quite a distance. Everything was flattened except for the church. I believe even the grass around the church was fine. I'm not sure if that says that in the article. I might have saw that in a different one. But the priests themselves also suffered no ill effect from the radiation. They did more than 200 medical exams in the years after that showed no ill effects to any of these priests, as they had thought they would for sure get radiation poisoning. And they'd all been meeting, getting together. They're talking about, they were at a Eucharistic Congress in Philadelphia in 1976. They're all sitting together again for one of the first times again. And the guy said that he was just sitting down in the rectory kitchen for breakfast. He had just sliced and dug in a spoon into his grapefruit when there was a bright flash of light. He said there was a terrific explosion that filled the air with one bursting thunderstroke. An invisible force lifted him from his chair, hurled him through the air, shook him, battered him, whirled him around and around like a leaf in the gust of an autumn wind. Then another priest said that the next thing he remembered, he opened his eyes and he was lying on the ground. He looked around and there was nothing in any direction. The railroad station and buildings in all directions were leveled to the ground. The only physical harm to himself was that he could feel a few pieces of glass in the back of his neck. As far as he could tell, there was nothing else physically wrong with him. Thousands were killed or maimed after the explosion. And after the American military had made it there, they explained to him that his body would begin to deteriorate because of the radiation, as many of the Japanese people had blisters and sores from the radiation. But the priests, again, never had any signs of radiation poisoning on their skin or otherwise. And they attributed this to the devotion to the Blessed Mother and his daily Fatima Rosary, where he feels that he received a protective shield from the Blessed Mother, which protected him from all radiation and ill effects. And that comes from, I can't remember which Fatima secret that is, where I believe they think that one of the secrets might correlate with some kind of nuclear sort of event.
Well, and it is interesting because the bombing happened 1945. Fatima was what,
1918?
I think it was before. It was
before the war.
Was it before World War One?
So 1907
or 8, 11?
Yep, something.
Because the war was from 1914 to 18, somewhere thereabouts. But so this was
Our Lady of Fano was May 13th, 1917. So I think it was a year before the war. I think it wasn't the war.
I thought the war ended in 18, but maybe it didn't start till then. So, I mean, this was 2030.
Well, you're right. World War I was 1914 and 1918. Just a second.
That's what I thought.
Let me look here. Says it reported in 1917.
Fatima.
Yep.
Oh, so that's.
I think she said there would be an even worse war that would break out.
Yeah,
World War II.
And
sorry to everybody that knows all this and is just annoyed that we're taking this long to look it up.
We're too lazy.
We should have looked it up ahead of time, but we didn't know this. I didn't foresee this coming. I should have.
Yeah. Leave your hate comments below.
Yep, you can.
Increases search results.
So it's interesting that these priests, they said it was their dedication to the rosary and the protection from the Virgin Mary that saved them from nuclear annihilation, whereas the bomb was literally dropped and detonated basically on top of the church. They were thrown around a little bit. Nothing terrible happened to them. And I mean, that is a miracle in itself.
Sure seems like it.
And I would say that would strengthen my faith if I lived through that.
Yeah, I mean,
and all those guys lived to be old men. I didn't get to that, but they lived to be old men. They did die now, but they were pretty old.
Well, and we were trying to look this up beforehand to see how many people survive. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know enough about it to know. I mean, there's going to be random people here and there that. I mean, there's random people that survive falls out of airplanes without parachutes. I mean, so there's.
And so then you can look at whether they're in like the hypocenter, like these priests were, versus on the outskirts, or so it's. Because I don't want to say they're the only people that survived there, but that there must not have been many. The way that it looks like.
Well, the walls are standing. Looks like the roof is gone and whatever, but
on the church.
Yeah.
Did you zoom in on it?
I don't know. It
looked like there was some damage.
Yeah, it's definitely got damage, but the walls are standing unlike a lot of the other structures around it. But I mean, it's quite a story. I mean, it sure seems like a miracle occurred there. But because this would be a boring podcast without controversy, I'm going to put on my Steve Skojek hat here. Ask, what does that tell us about God that these priests survived this and all the other poor people around it got vaporized?
Well,
how do we square that in our spiritual head?
Well, I would say that those priests were living a faithful life, and not that other people weren't, but they also were asking for protection from the Blessed Virgin Mary, whether they, I guess, intentionally did that or not. But so it could have been just some sort of miracle through the protection of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and for a greater purpose. Maybe that's why God would save them, as far as that they could show the world that they were leading faithful lives and they were saved from a tragedy that should have literally vaporized them in a second. And death may not be the worst thing. Like if people had survived, they would have suffered probably more, and it's not like anybody wants to die, but like to die from radiation poisoning months later, that would be worse. Maybe it is a merciful act, and we don't know, it says in the Bible, you should be ready for death at any moment, and so really everybody should be ready for death, and you never know when it's going to come. And, I think even, you should never be afraid to ask for God's mercy at any moment, and everything's gonna be okay, So I don't view death as being like the worst, scenario, I guess, either.
It's probably easy for you and me to say.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, but I mean, I don't know. Like, if you start thinking about different ways, if you have preference on how to die, I don't know. Like you wouldn't have even known it.
If the choice is being vaporized by a nuclear bomb
This took a weird turn.
or surviving it and never suffering radiation,
You would choose that.
I think most of us would choose the surviving.
Sure. Well, and I think, because God has a different plan for everybody. And so, like, maybe just like Saint Teresa of Lisieux, she wanted to be a little flower, and maybe this, like there's big flowers, there's little flowers, there's trees, there's all kinds of different, I guess, spiritual manifestations, I guess, for different people. And God has a plan for everybody. And maybe their role was to really, show that, that faith does provide protection, and God is right there with us all. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like God could have knocked that airplane out of the sky and saved everyone.
Well, but he respects free will, and there's free will involved. God always respects free will.
Yeah.
And that was the will of our, the people in charge of the military. And
was it the will of the people in the military that the guys in the church not get killed?
No, but that was the will of God, apparently.
Oh, I get the apparently part. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I think that apparently part has some problems with it that I understand why people struggle with that. I struggle with that.
So is it easier for you? Just everybody dies, the priest too?
I'm an egalitarian. Like, it's easier for me to rationalize God wiping everyone out or saving everyone. I struggle with the idea that God permitted the vaporization of one person and saved another person who happened to have been praying the rosary.
Yeah, but I mean, if it was, for a larger purpose, I can see it. Like, that doesn't bother me. It doesn't, as far as like, as far as resolving why some people have to die versus others. I mean, those, it happens.
Again, I think that's easy for you and me to say. I don't know. I
don't know, like, why, like, because some people die in car crashes on the way home from work, but but you don't really think about it that way, as far as like that, those are just chance occurrences. Like,
yeah, except the idea this is not a chance occurrence.
Well,
the idea
right.
This is like literally some divine interference, if you will. Because by all rights, these guys should have been toasted like everyone else. That's the difference, I think. I mean, I've been driving down the road and a deer will run right out and cross me in front of me. And I'll be like, man, a second earlier I could be dead. Like, that's an aspect of randomness, and maybe God is part of that too. I don't know, but I think that's a different situation than this, where by all rights, these guys should have died and they didn't. And the point of the story is that they didn't because of a miracle. Miracles are great, but miracles can be problematic in this case, because then you're asking, why does God protect, exercise a miracle for the benefit of these people and not other people? And
that's the only way that I can rationalize, is that they were there for a greater purpose. I mean, I don't know.
I think this is another one of those areas similar to the heaven and hell thing that is well above my pay grade. And it's something that I don't have a good answer for this. I chalk it up to something that I don't know or understand, and sometimes it's a spiritual struggle for me to think about these things, because it tests my faith a little bit, as I think maybe it should. I don't know. I think
I'm fine with whatever it's my time to go, that is fine. And if somebody is saved because they were called to a higher purpose, I am fine with that. Like I don't have any issue with that.
Well, what if some of the people killed there were in a state of sin and went to hell, and if they'd have survived this, they would have been, oh my gosh, this is a miracle. I got to get to confession and say, I mean,
I kind of suspect that maybe that isn't as big of a factor as what we think, because like if you look at eternity, like you see all of time at the same time, I think is how people generally think about it. It's like you see your whole life and you see what you're going to do, and it's just like, I think, those that are going to ask for mercy and just trust in God and be humble, they're going to receive mercy, and those that wouldn't do it anyways. I kind of think that's the truth.
maybe it is. I don't know.
That's what I mean, that's the only way that you can rationalize it, I think, as far as, an all-loving God, which God is, and he's gonna, like, through Jesus, everybody's gonna be saved. And I mean,
I will say that I understand why some people would find this story deeply incompatible with the notion of a loving God, because it's hard to understand how a loving God allows this scenario to play out the way that it does. I'm not saying they're right. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying.
So what if they had dropped the bomb and nothing had happened, and blasted in the air and everybody been saved? Would that, we might have lost the war. Like if they kept dropping bombs and they just kept going off in the air, I don't know.
Yeah,
So, I mean, I don't know how because you're going against free will, which they had. And I don't know. I don't know how you rationalize all that, because I mean, in different aspects of war, you have people using guns where they're aiming them and firing and using their free will to exercise their rights there. There's all kinds of terrible things that happen in war that are a consequence of free will.
I think those are, but yes, but I think those are two different. I think the whole concept of war is a problematic thing, and the fact that God would allow people to use their free will to do something this horrible is one thing. But the point of the article, I think, is that God obviously can intervene, and there would be nothing preventing God from intervening and saving this entire city from a bomb blast.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that God chose is the right word, but God did not do that. That challenges my concept of a loving God in some sense.
Along those same lines, did you ever watch the movie Hacksaw Ridge?
No, I have not.
It's a fantastic movie. It's about a Seventh-day Adventist who refused to carry a gun.
This
during
Mel
battle.
Gibson's movie?
Yep, but it's based on a true story.
Yep, I'm familiar with it. I just never watched it.
Desmond Doss is the guy's name, but he refused to carry a gun because he was anti-violence. But he basically just saved people's lives then during the war. And there's all kinds of miraculous stuff that happened around that guy where, people were trying to kill him, like the enemies would try to fire their gun and they'd be jammed and whatever else happened. And there are so many miracles around that guy that, and he wasn't praying the rosary. God loves everybody. I mean, I think that I don't know, man, like, I think that, God does have bigger plans for some people. And, if you truly believe in God and ask for his help and protection, like this guy here, Desmond Doss, a Seventh-day Adventist, I mean, he was protected in miraculous ways.
I think that's I totally can see that. I think the bigger question is, it's not obvious to me why the innocent, presumably innocent people, not everyone that was killed in Hiroshima was some evil actor.
No, it wasn't a military target.
Right?
Yeah.
There was plenty of people there that are just going about their lives, and next moment they're gone. And
I think the important thing there is God's mercy was there for them too. It was. I mean, God's mercy is there for us all.
Well,
and I think that's why he allows it to happen, because he's right there.
If anyone has a better explanation for that, let us know. Join the Uncharted Catholic Man Facebook group if you're not already in it. It's an interesting topic. I mean, it's not an easy thing to think about, much less talk about, and I don't have a good answer for it. But I think these are the kinds of conversations that we want to have and are trying to have, and hopefully it's helpful, and hopefully we're not blowing up people's faith as they hear us talk about these things, but these are sometimes
it's good to
uncomfortable
wrestle with
reality.
it.
Yeah. Anything else, Jonah?
No, I think that's it. I mean, or if anybody else has any stories of miracles they want to share that are confirmed, we would love to hear them.
We'll probably do an episode on miracles, maybe certainly Eucharistic miracles at some point in time. I think it'd be a fun topic. But this is a miracle that has, it has some controversy to it, I guess, unlike other miracles, maybe. So anyway, all right. Well, till next time, everyone. Have a good one.
Yep. Bye.